Hello everybody, this is Bird Brain. We are nerdy for the birdies. Apologies for the lack of content. I actually meant to release a video yesterday, which was going to cover most of what we did here. I recorded it, and then we got big news today, so I decided to include that news in this video, and so we can kind of mash the two together before we get to other things this week. So, obviously the big news in Philadelphia, a franchise great has finally retired. Brandon Graham retires, the longest tenured Eagle, most games, so many great accolades to his name. He's going to be an Eagles Hall of Famer in a few years as well. Just a great player. And I'll be honest, Graham was playing at a level where I still think he could have been a good rotational guy for the next few years. But, you know, obviously it's time to give room to some of the young guys, including some we're going to talk about today. But yeah, he's just one of those guys that he was never necessarily the greatest player on the field. I mean, he played, alongside Fletcher Cox. You had Jason Kelsey, Jason Peters, Lane Johnson. Like, you've had probably better players than him in Philly. But in terms of exemplifying the values of this team on and off the field, I think that was truly his greatest strength. And it's why, he is going to be a fan favorite for years to come. I was very fortunate this Christmas to get as a surprise a autographed Kelly Green Brandon Graham jersey, and now that jersey has even more value to me than the day I got it. So we have a lot of appreciation for Brandon Graham and what he's done for this team, and now he can enjoy retirement. Hopefully he stays around the team. He's involved either as like a mentor figure or just around the team in general. We'll see. But we have to move on, of course, and with the offseason, a lot of things have happened. So what I've kind of decided to do with free agency videos is, unless there's like a big signing, I'll probably group together a lot of the smaller ones into their own video, just because I don't really have to want to talk about a long snapper for one video. So we have a few signings that have happened over the last few days, some dealing with special teams, some with defense, and a big extension to talk about as well. So let's move on to our next topic. So we have Charlie Hewlett, the long snapper from the Browns. He's been in the league for about 10 years. Charlie Hewlett is our new long snapper, which means Rick Lovato is no longer a Philadelphia Eagle. So with the retirement of Brandon Graham and Rick Lovato leaving the team, only two members of that Super Bowl 52 team remain. So obviously it is a shame to see some of these guys go. I'm not as familiar with long snapping, and it's something I probably pay the least attention to in a game, so I really can't give much analysis on Charlie Hewlett. I can't really say if Rick Lovato is like retiring, he's getting old, if he wasn't good enough. I know he had some issues in the Super Bowl with some infraction penalties, but other than that, it seems like the Eagles are going in a new direction. And speaking of new directions, we have a new returner potentially here in Avery Williams, the returner from the Falcons. He's kind of played a little bit all over the place in his career. He's been a running back, he's been a corner, and he's settled in primarily as a returner, which probably means the Eagles aren't bringing back Britton Covey. It is rather interesting. They're not designating him as a running back or a corner. They're just designating him as a simple returner. So he is his own position. So I think that's rather interesting. And it will be interesting come roster time. And who knows, maybe they'll still give him, let him take some meetings in the running back room, maybe a few meetings in the cornerback room, in case in a pinch, if certain things were to happen in a game, if players get injured, he's at least able to play, if he makes this roster, of course. But the Eagles do bring back an old friend. Patrick Johnson was re-signed to this team. He was a draft pick of the Eagles back in 2021, and he's been on and off the roster a little bit. He was here last year in the preseason, and I believe he was also in Brazil. But Patrick Johnson now back, and he's a good depth special teamer. He can play a little bit on the edge. We haven't seen him really get a ton of run at edge rusher. Maybe he'll have more of an opportunity to earn a spot this summer. But he has some competition to go up against, so we'll see. Speaking of competition, the tight end room. Obviously, we still don't know about Dallas Goedert and where he sits with the team, but the Eagles have added yet another tight end, Kylen Granson. Was a very interesting tight end. He's kind of a little bit of everything, like a blocker and a receiver. He doesn't have a ton of production, but what he has shown to be is fairly explosive. He has a high yards per catch, which is pretty good. He wasn't used very often. The Colts, granted, their offense the last few years, even before Steichen, just didn't really primarily use tight ends that much, so none of them really have, like, great numbers. But he's got some nice catches, and who knows, maybe he can secure a bigger role in Philly. We don't know. We'll see how that training camp battle goes. But speaking of a training camp battle, that'll be rather interesting. A big signing the Eagles made. The Eagles have signed Azeez Ojulari from the Giants to be another pass rusher, and this is the biggest contract they've given to an outside free agent. You know, they've re-signed Saquon, they re-signed Zach Bond, but all the other free agent deals have been around $1 to $2 million. Azeez Ojulari got $4 million, which I've seen conflicting reports about whether or not that may affect the comp pick formula in terms of securing the 6th round pick that Isaiah Rodgers would have given them, which either way, you know, the fact they're willing to risk it for a player like him tells me that they have some investment. Azeez Ojulari is a nice player. He's another Bulldog. You've seen the memes going around, pictures. There's one where it's him on the field with Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith and Nakobe Dean, and Keeley, I think, was on the field as well, and Lewis Seen. It's like all the Bulldogs are here, and ironically they're playing Bama, and you got Dickerson, and Smitty was there as well, so it's like, who would have thought that like 9 potential Eagles were playing in one game? And there's probably even more, depending on how this draft class goes. Anyway, but yeah, you know, he's been a rotational pass rusher. He has had some injury issues, but I'm intrigued by the upside. And I think, again, you're starting to look at that pass rush room, the edge room, and you've got some interesting depth. I think there's going to be some fun competitions in camp, and I can't wait to see what these guys do. And last but not least, the Eagles have made a big extension. Lane Johnson. It's a little complicated to understand the contract terms. From what I basically understand, they extended him by another year and gave him $25 million. So now he's on the team through 2027. So right now you have your quarterback, running back, your top 2 receivers, 3 offensive linemen, all signed through the next 3 seasons, and you don't have to worry about that. And that's great for continuity there for this team. And it seems like Howie's putting together a bit of a plan. Now, what that plan may be, we're going to talk about that in a couple days. I'll be doing that in a video. And then we're going to start getting into some of the draft previews. I'm going to preview the tight end position later this week, and I'm going to talk about some potential targets for the Eagles in the draft. Anyway, so this is Bird Brain. Hope you guys enjoyed being nerdy for the birdies today. Fly Eagles fly. See you around.